Hello. This video contains a lot of topics on stuff that I wanted to make like really well put together videos on, but you know, adult life and shit, I don't really have the time. So I'm just gonna talk into the mic while doing other stuff and, you know, hope that I get some discussion in the comments, because I'm actually really curious about if people feel a similar way about the current state of League of Legends or the past few years specifically. Yeah. So, starting off, I think League of Legends has a lot of issues, and I think most people can agree with that. So, this video is going to be about, like, my main issues that I personally really dislike about League at the moment. But I want to hear everyone else's. I want to see if people feel the same way. You know, I think sometimes we take Riot for granted because when there's enough uproar, they really do listen, and I think most of the time they do try. And I think if we talk about stuff like if we talk about these issues and bring up stuff like this, then, you know, it can only help. You know, if you were to ask just about any League of Legends player, they would probably tell you that the game is shit. And I think there is, like, some truth to that, but I guess under all the annoyances that come with playing this game, it really is a good game. Like, otherwise, people wouldn't be playing it, and new players wouldn't be joining, and, well, I guess a lot of new accounts are probably Smurfs. At the very least, a decent amount, but I'll get into that later. So this first issue, I don't think a lot of people are going to agree with me on this, or at least not the people who normally voice their opinion about League of Legends. So I feel like it's hard to find people who play this game for fun anymore. Well, not exactly that. Like, so solo queue is by far the most popular game mode, if you want to call it that, followed by blind pick, and then draft pick is behind that. And I'm not really talking about solo queue because there it makes sense that people just try their hardest to win, and you know, if you're playing solo queue the whole time, then grinding the ladder is assumingly what you enjoy about the game. But me, for example, like, I pretty much exclusively play draft pick games, and not only that, but like Azir bot or currently AD Akali bot lane. Like, if I was playing solo queue, I'd get reported like every single game. But you know, I play with my friends, but I feel like even if I was doing these things with a bunch of randoms, I feel like I would get reported every single game. And I think that, like, it might not be as bad in blind pick, but I really don't want to fight over roles anymore. But, you know, in draft pick, like, I don't know when it was, but, like, Caitlyn was strong, really, really strong, like, 4 patches ago, maybe, and 9 games out of 10, I played against a Caitlyn, which was like, and I was kind of questioning myself, like, do these people actually enjoy playing Caitlyn? Or do they just pick Caitlyn because they want to win the game, right? Like, you don't see off-meta picks anywhere anymore, or off-meta builds. Like, when's the last time you've seen an AP Tristana or an AP Rengar? I feel like people don't play the game for fun, and they play it in such a, like, boring and slow and risk-free way constantly, which would make sense for solo queue, but I'm playing normal games, right? I don't understand this. And with every new patch, it just feels harder and harder to get away with playing something that isn't a top-tier champion that some app told you to pick. But it's not only, like, champion picks, for example, but I think, like, people have collectively gotten a lot better at the game, and that's just kind of an inevitability, and I'm not even saying that that's a bad thing. But, like, laning phase has become so excruciatingly boring. A while ago, I found these videos that I recorded on my laptop from, like, Season 6, and it was just me playing Azir bot with my friend playing Thresh. Me and the enemy laners would just throw ourselves at each other over and over again, just constantly fighting. And I really miss that. Like, nowadays, everybody plays so slow and risk-free and doesn't do anything unless the jungler's there. And you know what I mean? Like, to me, that's incredibly boring. Does nobody else feel like that? Like, I can't really believe that other people find CSing fun and freezing the wave fun and not doing anything unless you know where both junglers are fun. Like, is 2v2 fighting not fun for people? Like, even in the other lanes, is 1v1 fighting not fun for people? Or are people just... Or is this just a consequence of people only ever picking the really good champions and only ever counter-picking, and then you don't really have the choice to fight? So, I don't know, I think it's like a mix of these two things that kind of ruin laning phase for me. And you might respond with, haha, skill issue, or that League just isn't for me, and, you know, you might be right, but is League for you then? Like, because I don't really believe that people enjoy this, like, where you just kind of sit there and passively play the game, not really doing anything engaging until like 15-20 minutes into the game. I don't understand how anyone could enjoy that in a like casual game mode such as normal draft pick. And the solution to this, I guess, would be to just play something more casual. So but that doesn't always work either. So if we're taking ARAM for an example, like recently I had an ARAM game where, you know, I go in and then I'm looking at what's available. And it's like, oh, Dr. Mundo. And you know what? I'll play Real Dr. Mundo, which is a build my brother came up with, where you build Moonstone and you heal people because you're a doctor, right? And then I get in game, and then I'm against, like, Lux and Anivia and just, you know, these typically really good ARAM champions, and then when they get kills, they type in question mark and GG easy and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, we'll get into Toxicity more, and just seeing question marks in chat doesn't really bother me all that much, but I mean, like, it's just the intent behind it. Like, they're trying to get you tilted so that it's easier to win in an ARAM game. And this isn't like a one-time thing either. Like, shit-talking in ARAM is extremely common, at least from what I see. And that happens with, like, any game modes, really. So I couldn't bring myself to play Pick Earth back when AR Earth wasn't a thing. Because people would just pick, like, the most annoying thing they could come up with. They would, like, essentially just try and speedrun win the Earth games by picking all the best champions. And my new favorite game mode, like Nexus Blitz, which hasn't been coming back, they're also too, like, something that would be incredibly common is people, like, you know, who report my second jungler because he didn't come protect the Soraka immediately, and stuff like that. And that might have been a consequence of Riot initially saying that it was going to be a permanent game mode with also a rank system, so I think it might have attracted some more of these, like, try-hardy ranked players, but still, it seems kind of weird that even the game mode with these, like, obscure mini-games, people have this almost need to win the game. Anyway, I got high hopes for this 2v2v2v2 game mode. I'm just really hoping there's not a lot of, like, laning and farming that you're forced to do, and it's a lot more just permanent team fighting. Above all else, I really hope that it's permanent, because I love League of Legends. I love playing specific champions with weird builds and weird roles, and I don't want to be forced into picking meta champions just so that I have a chance to make it out of laning phase without already having the game be lost. Might have been a good idea to not take the game modes team and put them on TFT, which isn't even a League of Legends game mode, and for the love of God, take it out of the client. Whenever I mention this to somebody, that, like, the game is just incentivizes these boring strategies that I don't really want to do. I just want to play the game in a fun way. People often suggest that I play, like, different games, but that's not really a solution the way I see it, because the other games don't have League of Legends characters, right? Like, playing Azir is some of the most fun I've ever had in a video game. And up until recent years, building wrong and picking the wrong champions didn't really feel so suffocating. But now as people get better and seemingly try and get every advantage they can, you just kind of... It feels like you're getting suffocated out of being able to play the game within 5 minutes, and then the other team is already so far ahead because you didn't pick a champion that can easily get lane priority and all these things. That you just kind of end up losing the game. Like, it's not technically lost at 5 minutes in, but there's really nothing that you can do, or people generally don't make these astronomical mistakes that just a casual player can get back in the game off of. Now, there's a lot of reasons that I think that people have become so eager to win the game. I think Riot's marketing has a decent amount to do with it. So recently they brought out the cinematic that everybody hated, right? Which was just a camera going through Summoner's Rift with a bunch of pro play things in the background. And this is kind of what I think is wrong with the game, right? So the game kind of just is Summoner's Rift, and there's not much more to it, to be honest. And then the way they market it, it's like, so they used to kind of market the game as, hey, look at these cool champions that we have, right? There were even ads for League of Legends that I saw quite often on YouTube, where there were these like new players coming into the game, and they had the weapons from the champions, and the guy was like, oh, look at this cool Darius axe that I have. And it's, the marketing was kind of about the cool champions and how they're fun to play. But now the way they're marketing it, it's like, hey, you see these pro players? This could be you one day if you grind hard enough, and if that doesn't appeal to me, which, I mean, makes sense because it's kind of not supposed to. But being a pro at League, I feel like when it comes down to it, most people wouldn't even want that, right? Like, being a professional League of Legends player, isn't that great? Like, you kind of have to play the game for, like, I don't know, 10, 12 hours a day, grinding the same meta champions endlessly. Is that really going to be fun for anybody? And I mean, yeah, there's going to be exceptions. Like for example, because it's a job, right? Like, so I love my job. I love coding, but I don't do a lot of coding in my free time, right? And yeah, so, like, you play a lot of League of Legends because it's fun, but once it becomes your job, you, like, have to do things in a certain way, and I don't know, it doesn't sound that great to me. And I feel like a lot of people would initially say, like, oh yeah, I'd love to be a pro player, but then when you get, like, closer to the goal, or when reality hits and you see how much mindless grinding you have to do at these, like, mechanics that aren't really any fun, I don't know if many people would still feel that way. But this kind of marketing of, hey, you could be a pro player too, or look at how cool it is to be a professional League of Legends player with all these people on stage watching you. It's like, I feel like that is definitely a contributor to this how people just try to win and get every advantage and don't really care that much about having fun. Another big reason why I think this is happening is, these stupid apps like, Porofessor and Blitz.gg and OP.gg. Actually, I don't think they have an app, but you know what I mean, right? Because everybody's just doing what this app tells them to do. Like, hey, just pick S-tier champions. Pick one of these. This will get you a win. And then, okay, it makes the runes for you and makes the build for you. And that's also a big part of what I think is killing off-meta builds, right? Like, they've practically gone extinct. Like I said before, really, when's the last time you've seen an AP Tristana or just something like that? Now, this might be a bit of a hot take, but I think apps like this really shouldn't exist. So, like, there's some features, like jungle timers, for example, on the minimap, I think kind of should just be in League to begin with. But I feel like it really kills innovation, or just you know, random fun builds that people come up with. And don't get me wrong, I think removing barriers of entry is good. So like the new recommended rune system Riot came up with is good, and recommended items to build is good, but they also tend to be a double-edged sword because now everybody just kind of buys what the game tells them to. And I think we just had like a really great example of how this can actually even hurt the player base quite a bit. So Azir basically got a rework recently, and 10 out of 10, amazing job. It regained his identity and made him more versatile and more build options, and all in all, great rework. But one of the main changes is now you basically have to max W, right? And before you were maxing Q, and because the little recommended ability to max and the little flash that tells you which ability it recommends you upgrade was still on Q, and people just kept maxing Q, and they've had more buffs for Azir recently, and the buffs are on W, and they're saying in the patch notes people should be maxing W, but people just kept maxing Q because that's what the game's telling them to do, right? And Azir's win rate was really bad, and people were saying the champion's unplayable, it just doesn't work. And now what they did is Riot specifically coded in that for Azir the recommended skill to max is always gonna be W. They had to hard code that in. And now his win rate has gone way up, and I mean, there were buffs within the last patch too, but I'm pretty sure the most influential thing on the win rate there is that the game had to be hard-coded to tell you that you should max W, because everyone is doing what the game and these apps tell them to do. Yeah, so, you know, I don't really have a solution to this. Personally, I'm all for like having open source things and developer APIs and stuff like that, but I don't know, I don't think these apps are all that great for casual League of Legends play, and I feel like everybody uses them so heavily, or even the Riot systems, that it kind of just kills, you know, these fun builds that you used to see. And because people are now just picking the best of the best champions and the best of the best builds and all that all the time, it's kind of just this extra layer of people already getting constantly better at the game that it kind of just kills off having fun and playing for fun and developing new strategies, and now it's all just about playing the most consistent way, the most boring way, over and over again to just win the game, and people derive their fun from winning and not from playing the game. And my only solution to this problem would be, you know, having a permanent game mode where where like farming isn't so incredibly important and objectives aren't so incredibly important. You know, like one of my favorite game modes was Ascension, and there was like some objective control there, but it was, you know, you just constantly were team fighting, and that was incredibly fun, and I wish there was more of that. Alright, yeah, wow, that was a lot that I had to say on that first thing. Okay. This next section is going to be about League of Legends content creation. So, I think League of Legends educational content is kinda shit right now. So I think the level of information that is in educational League content nowadays is a lot higher, which also kind of reflects the player base as a whole getting a lot better. But I feel like it's stuck behind this like wall of shitty content. Like, you kind of have to overcome the shit content to get out the good information a lot of the time. Or how at times it can be a bit like misleading almost. So as an example, like a few years ago, I got a video in my recommended that was like from Skillgapped, or there's this other one, you know, they make like guides and videos and then shill their subscription service or whatever. So the video was called something like How to Win Lane Every Single Game on ADC, and I was starting to get this feeling how impossible it is to win lane with my like weird builds and stuff, so I thought, oh wow, I'm gonna watch this, and then maybe I'll be able to develop some habits that'll make me not lose lane as hard all the time, or at the very least go even with my weird builds. So I start watching this video, and then it's like, oh, you should do this and do this and do that, right? And we showed Jin for this example because he can easily, you know, clear waves without an issue. He's long-ranged, he's high-burst, and he's got a super strong early game, and he's a good example for these, like, habits. And then they keep going in the video, and for the next thing, they're also just showing Jin again. And then again, for, like, the next example. And at the end, the takeaway from the video is kind of just like, well, if you want to win lane every game, you should pick Jin. Or someone similar to Jin. Right? Who is this, like, lane bully and can pressure constantly. And it's like, I could have thought of this myself, right? Like, I'm not watching the video because I don't know Jin exists. Like, I want to know how to win lane when I'm not playing Jin, because Jin's whole design kind of, like, just wins lane automatically almost, like, right? The way he's designed incentivizes you to harass early and bully the enemy laners, and then you kind of just win because of the way the champion's designed, right? And you see a lot of, like, champion guides also. Now, that was always quite a kind of a thing, and I feel like they used to be better, but that might just be, like, a nostalgic look at things. But, you know, if you look up a champion guide, and chances are you're going to get, like, some 10-minute video that just gives you screenshots of the wiki, explains to you what the abilities do, gives you, like, an outdated item build, and if you're lucky, some, like, weird interactions with your abilities, right? Like, it's kind of just like a slightly glorified champion spotlight. And if it's a new champion, you know this video was made day one on PBE, because they all want to get, like, the most clicks and the hype from the new champion. And, you know, the information is only going to be valid for, like, max a month, right? When the champion comes out and he's super broken, and then they tune it back already, and then the build path is already completely different or something like that. And then there's, like, another kind of guide. So, if you were watching League content back in, I don't know, Season 6, right? There were a lot of channels who, they would just upload, like, a daily video, and it would usually just be a full gameplay commentary, right? Where they pick a champion, they have a face cam in the corner, and they just talk about how they're playing the game. So, you know, like, basically just a modern streamer. Like, if you were to watch a stream VOD now, it would just be, like, one game of that on YouTube. And people sort of stopped doing that because, like, I don't think it's very engaging content, right? And it makes sense. Like, a stream highlights video is gonna do a lot better than that. I feel like most people would prefer watching one of those. But now, you know, if you look up a champion guide, a lot of the times you'll just get basically that, like a gameplay commentary, where it's just a guy, and he might even be streaming. It might even just be a stream VOD, just clipped to that one game. Where, and you know, sometimes they'll just, like, explain what the abilities do while they're walking to lane, and then kind of talk about what they're doing in the game. And I'm not saying that the information there is bad. In fact, it's usually really good. Like, so, you know, they can talk about something, like, really matchup specific, or something really specific in this situation, and you usually get, like, a good example too. And I think those can be very informative. But the problem is, there's usually, like, maybe 5 minutes of really helpful information stuck inside of, like, a 30-35 minute video. And you kind of got to sit through all of it to find those, like, 20-second bites of really good information. You know, so I do think League of Legends educational content is often quite disappointing. But, you know, it's not all bad. Like, there are outliers, right? Like, there are a lot of in-depth champion guides that give you pretty much only useful information and stuff you probably did not already know. A while ago, I got a Warwick guide in my recommended, and it was like 1.5 hour long video where he was, like, taking clips of certain things, where he was showing, or in the practice tool, showing off exactly how specific mechanics work. And I think stuff like that should be praised because it is very good. But I feel like these very often get overshadowed by, you know, day one Mylio guide, right? Day one PBE. Before I move on to talking about other content, I just wanted to give, like, a few tips on maybe if you're looking for guides or trying to learn a new champion. First of all, I think figuring out a champion on your own can often be very beneficial, because when you discover something, you'll know why you're doing it in a certain way, which I think is very valuable. For example, about a year ago, I was getting into Vayne, and I play a lot of Xayah. And when I'm kiting somebody near a wall, I kite in a certain direction that lets me line up feathers along the wall, because it's like kind of a way that Xayah works, right? But on Vayne, you should be kiting in the other direction, like kind of away from the wall, so that you can condemn them into it. And like, it didn't take me that long, but like eventually I figured out, it's like, oh, this is, you know, you should be doing this differently. And I kind of doubt that very specific stuff that like is specific to you, you know, like learning Vayne from coming from Xayah is like a very specific thing that'll only like happen to me or like a very small amount of people, and that's something that you wouldn't find in any guide for that matter. And if you do want video guides, I think first of all, going to something like Mobifier that's like made for guides, a lot of the written guides, you can kind of just scroll down and find a YouTube video that they made. And I think that's usually like a good filter, because you're not using the YouTube algorithm, you're then just using someone who knows a fair amount about the champion already, and then perhaps also has a dedicated video about them. I feel like that you can kind of sift through a lot of the garbage that's kind of there for the YouTube algorithm, and that wastes your time. You can find a lot of good stuff there. As well as champions usually have their own subreddit, and as much as I don't like being on Reddit, that's really a great place to ask questions specific for the champion, and people there are usually very open and helpful to letting you learn the champion. One thing I don't recommend is going to a champion main Reddit and asking how to play against them, because you'll usually get stuff like skill issue, you mad, or just kind of things that are more on the unhelpful side, like pick X champion. It's usually like, yeah, if I was willing to just Google which champions counter this one and then constantly pick that one, I probably wouldn't be here, for one, and second of all, counter picking you only usually have that opportunity like half the time. So, yeah. Now I'm gonna quickly talk about content creators who make League content for the entertainment value. First of all, I think this is, like, by comparison, pretty rare. So, like, most content is kind of just, like, I'd say the majority of League content is just kind of, like, daily stream highlights from X high elo streamer. And I feel like most people watch that for the educational value that it provides, because at least I don't think that's very interesting usually. But, you know, things like Darkmane, for example. And I feel like content creators like him are dying out. As a random example, Magikarp Used Fly is someone who I used to watch back in the day. And he's moved on to other things. Uber Danger, I'm a huge fan of him, and his content is, like, amazing nowadays. Like, them moving on isn't a bad thing. They usually end up going and doing a lot bigger things and making a lot better content at the end of the day. Donkey, another great example, right? And I feel like there aren't really people filling that hole. You know, there really isn't all that much, like, edited only for the purpose of entertainment League of Legends content, right? One thing, if you like .exe videos, there is a lot of those. Back in the day, there were only like a few people doing it, but recently I came across a channel that makes a new one every single day. Like, the guy would just make a XChampion.exe video every day, and you would really overdo it with the sound effects. Like, you know on YouTube, if you look for like cartoon sound effects, you get the video that plays like 14 sound effects after another. Well, just imagine if you were to layer like 4 of those over top of each other. That's kind of how the videos sounded like. Like, every skill shot thrown hit, every like time a champion turned around, there was like a sound effect. And it was just too much for me. I could not stand it. And but people seem to enjoy it. If you would go into the comments, people would say like, "Oh, this is great. I can't wait for your next video." And well, the next video's tomorrow. And I mean, that is something that takes a lot of time to edit. But I think, like, maybe I'm just spoiled, right? Because I watch a lot of Team Fortress 2 content, and they set the bar extremely high with how much detail they put into everything and how well made like, Team Fortress 2 videos are. It's insane. So, wrapping this section up, I guess, if you're looking for League content, there isn't a lot of good stuff to choose from, is kind of just what I wanted to say. And I feel like kind of direction that the game is going, where it's all just about getting better and winning, that's only going to continue down that route, and there's only going to be less casual players making YouTube videos. And if you have any recommendations for me, like, send them in the comments. I'd be glad to take a look at some more fun League content. Okay, next I want to talk about Clash. And Clash is something that I think is, like, it's absolutely amazing, okay? So, like, this is the best idea that Riot's had in a long time, right? You know, as much as I like to play the game casually, getting a group of friends together to really play your heart out for this, like, tournament, it's a nice change of pace, and, you know, all around 10 out of 10 theoretically, but the execution is really bad at times. So, you know, it's no secret the League of Legends client is, like, the worst thing ever and kind of always has been. So this year specifically, whenever me and my friends were playing Clash, as a bare minimum, at least one of us in one of the games would not be able to enter Champ Select, and then we would get a random champion, and they would be forced to take Ghost and Heal, which at the very least just defaulted to Flash, Riot, like, holy shit. But, and I've seen it happen to enemies too sometimes, so sometimes you see them have Ghost and Flash on the loading screen. It's like, oh well, I guess they had to deal with this shit this time, right? And, you know, like, this is a billion-dollar company, and the fact that this has happened, like, every Clash this year, at least in one game, that's, like, utterly inexcusable. Like, how, right? Like, how has this not even been looked at? Because it obviously hasn't, because it can't be this impossible, right? Next up, this is the part that I hate the most, honestly. The rewards are garbage, right? So, I understand that Riot, and probably more rather Tencent, is absolutely allergic to giving out free stuff. Like, I feel like Riot would rather sacrifice one of its employees to an eldritch god than give you a free chest. And I think the worst part about the rewards is that, like, so first and second place you get a skin shard, which is good, and everything else below that is just, like, it's trash, right? Like, nobody even cares, and you can tell because, like, I feel like 90% of the teams just leave as soon as they lose their first game, which as soon as you lose your first game, you're guaranteed to get literal dog shit as a reward. So everybody just leaves the tournament, right? And, you know, I like to finish the game because once you're in losers bracket, there's a bit of, like, less weight and you can play the game a bit less seriously, you know, so we spice it up a bit with the champion picks and the builds that we do. And I just kind of wish there were also opponents to play against in the losers bracket oftentimes. And, you know, it would be nice to maybe get at least some orange essence for finishing the Clash, even though everyone else left. I think it would be really nice to have the rewards based on your number of wins, right? So then people have a bit more incentive to keep playing. And also, like, if you initially go into losers bracket, but then, like, everyone who loses a game in winners bracket leaves, you're still stuck with the most shitty rewards, even though the people who won their first game are just getting better rewards from you after quitting the tournament after a half hour. Like, it's kind of, you know, kind of shitty. Next up, team balance. This is also, like, inexcusably awful. So, basically, like, without fail, every time I get into a Clash, I'm usually tier 4 with me and my friends who are, like, silver players, and then some other team that's in the bracket is full of silver players, but then there's, like, one diamond in there. And then it's just like, well, of course they're gonna win every time. Like, you don't stand a chance at all. And I understand, like, I get it, right? Like, you want to let those people be able to play with their friends who aren't as good at the game, and I think you should be able to do that, but, the average needs to be weighed differently, because there's no way that a group who actually belongs in tier 4 wins that, like, ever. Basically any clash that I play, there's like at least one diamond player among some silvers, and it's bad. It is, yeah. And weirdly enough, even though the matchmaking just doesn't work, people still feel the need to Smurf in Clash. Now, I don't think there's that many, but a lot of people say that there is a lot of Smurfs in Clash, and I haven't really encountered too many people where I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely a Smurf, right? But, you know, I don't think there's much more Riot can really do there if they want to, like, allow Smurfs to just exist, kind of, because, like, there is the phone number protection, right? But everyone has multiple relatives that they could use a phone number from who definitely will not be playing League of Legends in their life, right? Like, it's kind of pointless. Anyway, moving on from Smurfs in Clash, I do want to talk about, like, Smurfs in general, which I think Smurfs are one of the biggest issues with League, and I really can't fathom why Riot allows them. First off, I want to say, like, I understand Smurfing a lot of the time, right? Like, you want to play on another region, that's the only way, because the game is outdated, and unlike Valorant, you can't just play on another server. There's a few reasons why I can kind of understand why Riot would allow Smurfing. One is that the player numbers go up, which means, you know, money, right? Oh, and of course, we need Smurfs, otherwise Nightblue and Professor Akali can't make any content. Jokes aside, though, dodging, I think, is a big one, too. So, you know, I don't really play ranked, right? But from what I hear, dodging, especially in the higher elos, is, like, almost a necessity and basically a game mechanic at this point. Because people, like, look up their teammates and make sure none of them have, like, a super shitty win rate and all that stuff, and then dodge, and then they go onto their other account because, well, Riot obviously doesn't like dodging because they keep increasing the dodge timer. But, you know, I think it might just be their way of saying, hey, we know the system is kind of shitty at times, so just play on multiple accounts, I guess? I don't know. One last reason, I think, is it also sort of keeps people playing the game. So a lot of people just have a Smurf account so that they can boost their ego a bit when they went on a loss streak, which, okay, yeah. Oh, another thing that I hear a lot is people make Smurf accounts because oh, my MMR is shit and it's broken and I need a new account, and then they just play on that one for the rest of time, I guess. I don't really know. I don't really think that's entirely true. I don't really believe that, like, you know, you go on some big loss streak and now all of a sudden your account is, like, cursed with bad LP values forever and ever. I don't really think that exists. But, you know, I'm not really the one who plays a lot of ranked, so I could be completely wrong. I think the worst part about Smurfs, though, is that you can just buy... You could just buy an account for $6 and be back to playing ranked immediately. Like, that's kind of appalling to me. But, well, I think buying an account is kind of better than leveling one, because then at the very least, you're not ruining brand new people's experience of the game, right? Because otherwise you're in a normal game absolutely destroying these poor people who have not played the game for more than 10 hours. So, all in all, I really just think Riot should not allow Smurfing at all. You know, I think it's kinda dumb that you can't just play on another region with your account. But, you know, it's probably, like, deep in the code and how the infrastructure is set up that they can't easily do that, so I kind of understand that one. But, you know, I don't really see a reason why they can't enforce something like this. Like, the region thing can't be their only excuse. Like, don't let Riot use that as their only excuse. From what I hear, Smurf detection is really good, right? So if you create a new account or you buy one, relatively quickly, you will be up against other Smurfs, and you can tell quite fast, right? And how quickly you can get a new account is, like, absurd, right? Like, so just buying one for $6 online, like, you could ban that account immediately. Like, there is no human being who will create a new League account with a weird-ass username and password that seems very randomly generated, then proceed to play bot games with other, obviously, robots playing the game constantly over and over again until they get level 30. Then the IP changes to like somewhere across the world, buys a champion, buys a rename, and then just plays ranked immediately for the first time ever. Like, that's 100% a bot account. There is zero reason why this isn't enforced at all. Like, I just don't get it. And you know, oh, another thing. For Valorant, you install a goddamn rootkit on my computer. Why don't you use that? That can help you detect Smurfs too. And I think the ease of access of Smurfs is like one of the biggest issues about the big issue of Smurfs. Like, getting into Toxicity next, there is zero repercussions whatsoever. Like, if you get banned, oh well, $6. I got a new account and I can be toxic and in as many games as I want for a week or two, where afterwards I will spend another $6 for a new account. And by the time that new account is also banned, the other one will be unbanned and I can just play on that one again. Like, there's zero repercussions to getting banned in League of Legends. Like, there's zero repercussions to being toxic at all. So, a while back, Riot made a video where they talked about player behavior and toxicity. And one of the things they said was, you know, if someone's having a bad day, we don't want to, like, ban them immediately, right? Like, you know, if you int once a year, that's fine, right? And I understand that, and I completely agree with that. Giving people, like, a second chance or the benefit of the doubt is good. But, you know, that kind of backfires when you just allow people to make an endless amount of accounts forever. And I just want to mention this again in the toxicity part. I'm kind of sad that I can't make friends in all chat anymore, because basically anything that you see in all chat, you assume at the bare minimum is passive-aggressive, first of all. A while back, someone in my team, like, complimented one of the enemies on his CS because it was actually good, and he started flaming him because he assumed it was an insult. Like, this is where we're at. And again, I think the reason why you instantly assume it's always something negative is because all chat nowadays is basically just used to gain an advantage, to have an easier time winning the game. You know, it's all question marks and GGEs, and even in ARAM, like, I'm telling you, ARAM has a toxic all chat. I don't understand how this happened. Another reason for toxicity is there's no real incentive to be good, right? So if you're toxic, essentially it's like $6 or $12 a month, right, to be as toxic as you want, because you have endless access to Smurf accounts. But if you're good, you know, the honor system is also just trash, right? Like, the rewards are shit, and we all know Riot is allergic to giving out free stuff. So you get, like, up until now, it was 2 skins that existed for basically all of League's lifespan. And now we got a new Malzahar one, which I think is good. I think we should be adding more free stuff so that there's at least some incentive to try and be a good person, right? Yeah, I think the honor system needs to be reworked once again, but for the first time ever being something actually useful and something that actually incentivizes people to be good, right? Like, because even if you just don't use the chat for the first quarter of the year, then there you go, you got all the rewards, right? And I think the people who just spam buy new Smurf accounts whenever they get banned don't really care about the ranked rewards every year, because they care about the LP number going up. Another thing about toxicity, I think, like, it's almost like a bit human nature, in the sense that if someone pisses you off, you have the control to just kind of ruin this game for them. And, like, you know, there's almost this, like, well, yeah, if you're being an asshole, I'm gonna lose this game and take you down with me mentality, right? And again, because there's no incentive to be good and literally zero repercussions to being bad, there's a lot of toxicity. So I think one of the most impactful things you could do to stop toxicity is, you know, stop allowing smurfing. And now, for my, like, big hot take, I think another one of the biggest things you can do to stop toxicity, one of the most effective things, would be to add voice chat to League of Legends. So I know a lot of people have strong opinions on this, and I get it, right? Like, League of Legends and text chat is really toxic, so voice chat sounds like it's going to be a lot worse. But I think it's actually going to be the opposite, especially if it's implemented correctly. I'm a big advocate for voice chat, and not just because I don't play the game very competitively, but I just think generally it would be a lot more fun. Like, I think League of Legends would be really fun if I could joke around with my random teammates. Or all chat voice chat. That would be, like... So, let me back up a bit. I think there is a very specific way you would need to implement this to make it work well, which I will talk about in a sec. But in terms of toxicity, I think... So, Reddit is regarded as a sort of toxic place, right? And Reddit is anonymous. All you see is a username. Same with League of Legends. There's only a username on an account that is very disposable, because you can just make a new one. So, like, when people just hide behind their username, they're not showing much of themselves. Like, so the way people act in League of Legends, they could be racist, homophobic, you know, anything you can think of. I feel like a lot of that is because you don't have to show yourself whatsoever. And you're not bound to that account or anything. Essentially exempt from all responsibility at all. And while voice chat wouldn't necessarily fix a lot of that, is you show a bit more of yourself, right? So, like, you become less toxic the more of yourself you have to show, right? So the things you say on League of Legends, you would never say to a person in real life that you met, right? And I think voice chat, well, like, obviously it won't completely stop this. I think this does show a bit more of you. Like, people hear your voice, they know, they can tell a bit more about you. I feel like because people show more of who they are, of themselves, they will end up being less toxic. Now, you still hide behind a username, and with voice chat there are some problems. Like, Valorant has this big issue that, and I agree, this is horrendous, that if a female is in voice chat, they will get harassed relentlessly quite often, and I think that is bad. An issue that definitely needs to be thought about before implementing something like this. But on the other hand, if we just never add voice chat, I don't think that'll ever become better. It'll eventually be fixed, but like, we have to implement voice chat first, because it's not going to be fixed without voice chat, if that's like a thing. Like, yeah, and it's going to be bad. And I'll get into on how I personally would implement voice chat next, because I think I do have some ideas that will solve quite a few issues that come with voice chat. So starting off, I think, like all chat, voice chat should be opt-in. And I think that extra step will kind of like deter people who, first of all, wouldn't be comfortable with it, but also I feel like just having it be opt-in, that you have to enable it, will cut back on the amount of people who will like immediately say, oh, report this guy because he didn't enable voice chat, right? And especially in the casual normal games, I feel like a lot of people just straight up won't use it until voice chat becomes a more friendly place, because I do think initially it won't be all that friendly. But then the people who want to use it can, and kind of initially filter out the bad actors, which would be my next point to voice chat. So I think muting people in voice chat could be used as a very effective sort of like soft report system. So what would end up happening is, if there's a guy who like constantly flames his teammates as soon as they make a first mistake, well, he's going to be muted by all of his teammates every single game, right? So, and I think similar to the report system and how it works now, you could kind of like weight these mute reports, sort of. So, for example, if you don't report someone in League of Legends, essentially ever, and then like maybe once a year you report somebody, that report has way more weight than someone who reports somebody else daily, essentially. So, if someone who basically never mutes a teammate mutes one person who's being really awful, they would then get like a heavy report on their account, essentially. And, I mean, as we all know, Riot's reports can tend to be real unreliable. So, you know, I think... but I really think if implemented and like utilized correctly, this like mute report system could work alongside the regular report system quite well. League of Legends is big with like streamers and content creators, and first of all, I think voice chat can make like for great YouTube content, for example, but in streaming it could be a problem, right? Because you know you're gonna get these trolls who try to join a game with the big streamer, and then when they're in the voice chat immediately start saying things that'll get them banned on Twitch. And I think if Riot ever implements voice chat, and I wish a lot of games would do this too, is that the voice chat can be set to a custom audio output, right? So then if you're streaming, you can, through the use of virtual audio cables or physical ones, you can essentially have it set up so you hear the voice chat, but then it does not go through to OBS, for example. And actually, I just remembered OBS recently came out with a feature that you can record audio specifically from specific programs and then not others. So essentially, you wouldn't even need to buy some program that does it for you or get like an expensive audio setup. Just about anyone with OBS installed could do it. Maybe if Riot creates a bit of a better honor system, you could also tie the voice chat feature specifically to the honor system. Now, I don't think this is a great idea, but like, there could be something that you kind of have to unlock it first, almost. Yeah, so one last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to voice chat is I think it could also really improve the game's balance. And I think it's fairly obvious that the game is mostly balanced around pro play, and sometimes that can really influence the casual side when they try and make a champion viable in pro play. I think it can really help with some of the more annoying sides of League, right? So, you know, when the game is so heavily balanced around having a coordinated team, something like voice chat can more closely bring together how like champions are balanced, right? Like, so assassins are pretty much, from what I gather, pretty much never played in pro play, and well, that makes sense, right? Because when your ADC asks for help, the assassin's gonna get killed, right? And then they're kind of like very hard to deal with on your own. So then if voice chat becomes a thing, assassins can be buffed, and there can be kind of like a more healthy dynamic between squishy champions and assassins, I would say. Although I probably shouldn't be the one talking about balance, if I'm being honest. Anyways, one last note that I want to talk about, I guess in this mini section on balance is, you know, Riot usually says when they're making a champion, they want to make something that is fun to play as and against. And, you know, I feel like they kind of forget that you also have to play against some of these champions. Like, has anyone in their life ever been having fun when they're about to get a kill and then Soraka ults? Or you get polymorphed? Or, you know, any number of these just like annoying mechanics, right? I think that can also make people a bit toxic and stuff, but annoying characters are going to be in every video game, and that's just the way it is, and some sick people are going to get their enjoyment from completely denying someone else's fun. Yeah. Well, I can't really think of anything else that I want to say about League in this video. One thing I do want to add is that I feel like a lot of casual players just don't speak up about how disappointing this game can be sometimes, and I feel like you know, that might be like a fear of getting immediately shut down because, like, hey, you're not good at the game, right? And then this also happens a lot. Like, if you say something is like, oh, well, you main Master Yi, what do you know? You know, sort of things like this, right? Or you're bronze. You don't talk about balance when you're bronze. And I think, you know, it's somewhat valid, but, like, if a bronze player says, I don't know, Talon is broken, as an example, right? I don't think, like, he might be right? Like, so, in terms of how the game is balanced, right? In pro play and higher elos, Talon probably isn't going to be that broken, but, like, for some guy who has no map awareness and is just trying to play the game for fun, it can very well be broken for him. And I think there's a lot of champions that are, like, and I think, well, you know, that's just going to happen, right? So, like, champions are going to be unbalanced, but I think people shouldn't be, like, shunned who aren't good at the game or who are average at the game. They shouldn't be shunned for having an opinion on this champion's being broken, right? Like, I think that opinion is still valid, and a lot of the times it can even be correct, right? Because there is a lot of champions that benefit from players not being that great at the game, and that will make them broken in that area. And I don't think that should be completely ignored and completely shut down. And in terms of other things too, like I think, so I don't go on Reddit often and stuff like this, but for example, the League of Legends subreddit might as well be the League of Legends esports subreddit, because that's most of what you see is about esports, right? I don't know if people even try, but I feel like if anything were to show up, it would be first of all buried in hatred, but also buried by pro play. So I feel like there's not a lot of space for casual players to voice their opinions, and I feel like most of them just don't bother. But like, I really wish more people who are unhappy with the state of game modes and are unhappy that you only have Summoner's Rift to play the game on if you don't want a random champion forced on you. And I think people should really voice a lot more about how this game is ever becoming more shitty for casual players, because I feel that way. I feel like more and more the game, the casual side is being neglected, right? Because like, we don't get any game modes, but hey, there's this TFT game that isn't even League of Legends, right? Go play that. That'll be fun, right? That's good for casual players. It's like, it isn't really though, because like, I don't want to play TFT. I want to play Azir, and I want to, yeah, I'm rambling a bit much, but before I leave, I just want to say, I'm really interested in having a discussion here. If not with me, I just want discussions about this to arise, essentially, because, I don't know, man, I want League of Legends to be better. I wish there was a better way of playing this game casually. I think a lot of people also want that, and not a lot of people bring it up or talk about it. So, thanks for watching this video, or probably more just listening, right? But, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. Now, go voice your opinion. If not in my comments, then somewhere else, please. If enough people do, Riot does actually listen.